What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for some more content for you guys. And seeing as it is the third international break, 11 seasons gone. 11 seasons. 11
feels like
games.
11 seasons gone.
Does feel like 11 seasons gone. 11 games gone, just over a quarter of the Premier League season played. A lot has been made out of Spurs this season so far, whether you're seen as positive, negative, whatever camp you're in about the Ange in, the Ange out. There's been a lot of discourse about Spurs this season, right? Spurs currently sitting in 10th in the league. We're going to, just take stock a little bit, see how we think that Spurs have done this season. Is it all that bad that maybe, myself was suggesting and other people were suggesting after the Ipswich game? The underlying metrics and data, are they stacking up in terms of in the direction that we want to go? And just give a bit of a quarter season review, I guess, of how the season has gone so far. So on the face of things, sitting in 10th in the league, 11 games gone, 5 wins, 5 losses and a draw. Sitting here right now in the international break, how are you feeling about the season so far?
Well, it's hard to know how to feel, because every time you think Spurs have turned a corner, they seem to turn back on themselves. And then every time you think, oh God, we really are in trouble, they seem to pull a result out the bag, and you think actually things are okay again. So when you're assessing Tottenham this season, I think everyone is quite rightly a bit perplexed, a bit bemused, and a bit confused about what to think about Tottenham this season. Are we good or are we rubbish? It's just impossible to know. As of 10 games into the season. What I would say is the underlying data suggests that we are quite good. The underlying data is positive for Tottenham. We're one of the highest, I think, in the top 2 for shots on target this season, and we're top 2 for XG created this season. We're bottom of the league for shots on target against this season. Well, in terms of the metrics that suggest should we be scoring more goals and should we be conceding less goals than the opposition, all the underlying metrics suggest yes, that is the case after 11 games. But you caveat that by saying I'm looking at the expected goals per shot we're conceding. That is one of the highest. So we don't concede a lot of shots, but the shots we do concede, the chances are quite high quality. That probably leads to maybe more goals conceded than the stats would suggest we are conceding. That is probably the case of right now, while we are in 10th and not higher up in the league as well. Has the fixture list been kind? A lot of people suggesting that. Haven't played Liverpool yet, haven't played Man City yet, haven't played... Who else haven't we played? Just those 2, I guess. Chelsea we haven't played yet. So 3 of the top 4.
Well, we haven't played yet. The top 3 we haven't played. We haven't played Forest, who are sitting in 5th. We haven't played Fulham. That's the only teams in the top half we haven't played.
So I guess, still got a lot of tough games to go. We've played 2 teams who are winless this season. We lost to both of them. And on that front, obviously that's a terrible look, and that's unacceptable when we're looking to really push on from last season, and when you're losing to teams like Ipswich and Palace, especially when they're in bad form and they haven't won a game this season, that's obviously going to lend teams to believe actually the team's not functioning as it should be, and there are serious problems with this team at the moment. But then you get big wins against teams like Villa, and you beat we beat them convincingly. We beat West Ham. That's always a difficult game. Went to Old Trafford and won 3-0. Beat Brentford, who have been in good form this season quite comfortably. Beat Everton 4-0 at home as well. So then you look at those results, you're thinking actually when we do win and we do play well, it's clicking really well and we're scoring lots of goals and we're winning really well when we do seem to get the 3 points. And I think every time we've won, it's been by at least 2 goals this season. Most of them have been actually by 3 or more goals as well. So that suggests that when we are on top form, we are a team to be feared, and we are a team that can batter you on our day this season. So at the moment, how am I feeling about after all that? It's so hard to know how to feel at the moment. What I will say is I'm a person who does usually like to listen to what data's telling me. And usually with these things, they do tend to even themselves out, bearing some outliers. And the underlying data does suggest we're going in the right direction and we're going in a good trajectory. So what I would say is I think those results will start to even themselves out, I would hope, come as the season goes on. Not to say that we're going to finish in the top 2, because I think we've probably dropped too much ground at this point to consider that. But I do still think that top 4 is very much a target we should be aiming for. We're only 3 points away from third at the time of recording, and that's given some bad results that we've had in the last few weeks. And I do think that will start to turn, and we will hopefully start to find some consistency in results this season. But having just lost to Ipswich, two of our last 3 games have been Ipswich and Palace in the league, and they've been terrible results. So it's hard to believe that when you're seeing those kind of results, and I grant that. But I just think when I look at what the numbers are telling me, it does suggest to me that we're not as bad as those results.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not as heavily stat driven as you, and I like to use my eyes a lot more, and I think that in the beginning stages of the season, after the five, 6 games, maybe it was just before the Crystal Palace game, or even the Brighton game, let's say after the Brighton game, right? I was looking at our performances, and I was looking at the games that we were dropping points in, whether it be the Arsenal game, the Newcastle game, the Leicester game. And I was sitting there and saying, look, we're playing really well. Like, we deserve a lot more out of these games. Like Arsenal, I thought we deserved a point. Newcastle, I thought we deserved to take the 3 points. At Leicester, I thought we deserved to take the 3 points. But these worrying signs and these worrying games are starting to creep in now. The Crystal Palace game, we deserved absolutely nothing from that game. It was really poor. The Brighton game, we played brilliantly in the first half and took the 2-goal lead, and deservedly so, but we completely chucked that game away. And you cannot play like that in a half of football and expect to take anything away from the game. So those 2 games, I don't think the way we conducted ourselves, we deserved anything from the game. The Ipswich game just gone, I thought we were shocking in that game as well, and got beat to a newly promoted side at home, which is not acceptable in terms of where we want to be and the trajectory we think we're on. So in the opening stages, I was kind of happy. I wasn't happy that we were dropping the points, but I could see something. I could see light at the end of the tunnel, and I could see what we're trying to do. But with these performances and results creeping into the season, I'm just starting to get really concerned about where this season is going. I'm happy in terms of the cups. We're in the quarterfinals of the Carabao Cup. Got a big tie against Manchester United, against Ruben Amorim in December. The Europa League, we lost against Galatasaray, which, first half was absolutely shocking, but it was a much changed team, a young team going to play in that kind of atmosphere. I didn't really expect much from that game anyway, but I'm very happy with the way we are. 3 wins out of our first 3 games in the Europa League. We're in a good place in the Europa League, but these performances starting to creep in the league are massively concerning me. And I think what you said about the fixture list, I think it's a very good point, because you look at the games and the teams that we've played in the first half, in the top half of the table. We've played Arsenal, which we lost. We played Brighton, which we lost. And we played Newcastle, which we lost. And we played Villa, which we wiped off the park. Fair enough. In terms of the teams who we played in the bottom half, we've beaten Brentford, beaten Manchester United, beaten West Ham, drew to Leicester, beat Everton and lost to Ipswich, and lost to Crystal Palace. So we should be picking up a lot more points from the teams in the bottom half of the table. And I think that's where we were good for a certain stage of the season last year, really beating those kind of teams. I don't remember the last time that we struggled to beat and not get consistent points off those teams that have been promoted. And we've played Leicester and we played Ipswich. We've taken 1 point from those 2 games, which I think is horrific in these first 11 games of the season, especially after we really wanted to kick on from last season. And in terms of, I thought we were kicking on from last season, but I am seeing these worrying traits. And with the fixture list that we've had so far this season, we should have more points on the board. That's the reality. And you're looking at the next, when we've played just over half the teams in the Premier League, right? In the next 9 games, or the next 8 or 9 games, when we've played everyone in the Premier League, this run of fixtures now is a very hard run of fixtures. We've kind of let the easy period get by us and not get as many points as we could have. So I'm really concerned about these next run of fixtures. When you're looking at Man City away in the league, Fulham at home, who are on unbelievable form, Bournemouth away, and we all know our away struggles. 1 win away all season, I think 4 in the last year or something like that. Bournemouth have just beaten Arsenal and Man City at their home, so this is a very difficult game. Chelsea at home is going to be also incredibly difficult. Then Southampton away should be a given. We have to get 3 points in that game. Liverpool at home, Forest away, who are having an unbelievable season. So in our next 6, 7, 8 games, the vast majority of them are all like form teams in the league. So it's massively concerning if we're struggling to get points against teams that haven't won all season, in terms of Crystal Palace, who are on dreadful form. Manager was getting massively questioned. Ipswich hadn't won all season. I mean, I am really concerned about this run of fixtures that we're on now.
And I think you're not wrong to be, but I also believe that if we can play to our potential, there's no reason why we can't get a lot of results in those games. And it's kind of the way Tottenham are, is they'll have you pulling your hair out with losses to likes of Ipswich and Palace, but then they'll probably pick up wins you don't expect. And I'm hoping if we can do that, it can balance itself out. And with the league being so tight, all it takes is a few wins. You can string a few wins together, and all of a sudden things are looking extremely different. On the flip side, a few losses, and we're also in the bottom half of the table. So that's also something he's got to be wary of. And if that does happen, he's going to be under increasing pressure, 100%. And if we do fail to pick up results in too many of those games, you know, we could easily find ourselves in like 14th place, given how tight the table is.
And that's just if we lose to Man City this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, the table is extremely tight, and that can work for you. It can also work against you, depending on how we perform. Now, I'm confident that we can get more, as much as when you read it out loud, you know, that those are some very tough games. I also believe on paper on paper anyway, I think we're better than a lot of those teams, and I think if we can play to our full potential, we can win a lot of those games. But we haven't done that so far in a lot of games this season, especially away from home. We've really, really struggled, and we've been outfought, and it's been struggle to find the right balance. It's a bit of a weird one with Ange. Beginning of the season, you know, he started with Decky on the bench and Maddison in there, and he started Maddison and Sarr. He then decided, you know, we need a bit more in the middle creatively, so then he drops Sarr, puts Maddison next to Decky. And, you know, things are actually improved. You know, I know we lost to Arsenal, but one thing what was key for me about the Arsenal game, as much as it was frustrating that we lost, is that we actually didn't look too open with Maddison and Decky in the middle. You would have thought having those two in the middle, we would have been carved open, but we weren't in that game. That was actually quite interesting, even though
they had no ambitions to go and attack us, though. That was
but still, it's a top team. Whatever you want to say about them having ambitions, they were trying to win the game, and they actually weren't able to create too many chances against a team that had a double 2 10s in the team like Maddison and Decky. We then played Brentford, we played United, we swatted them away, and then you're thinking, okay, we found our formation, right? Maddison and Decky, this is what we're going to go for. And then half-time at Brighton, you're really thinking, okay, we've really come into the season now. This is what Ange Ball's working towards. Unbelievable, right? And that's with Maddison and Decky in the middle. It then falls apart against Brighton, and you're thinking, okay, it fell apart in that game for one reason or another, can't put your finger on it, but we go again in the next game against West Ham. And then in that game against West Ham, it seems as though at half-time, obviously it's 1-1 and we concede another goal. At that point, it seems that Ange thought, actually, maybe it doesn't give us the right balance at midfield, even though for the past few games, we've been playing probably our best football of the season. He then decides, actually, the balance isn't right with those two, and we need a bit more legs. Brings on Sarr, we win that game 4-1, and then he starts them again. Then he starts Sarr again against Man City, win that game impressively, and then we start again Sarr against Villa, and we win that game.
Crystal Palace game before that.
Sorry, you're right. So he brings he takes off Maddison against West Ham, but then he brings Maddison back in, and we lose that game 1-0. Takes off Maddison on the hour mark in that game, and it was an absolute shit show. So after that game, I think he decides, okay, actually maybe I need to just stop this, and I need to start putting Sarr in there, and we need better balance. And all of a sudden, we had those City game that we won. We had the Villa game, which we won pretty well, albeit at half time it wasn't looking great, but we won the game 4-1. And all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, maybe this is actually the right balance now. Maybe having Sarr in there, having those legs, Decky having the season of his life, that's the right balance. And then Ipswich happens, and you're thinking, maybe that isn't the right balance. Maybe we do need a bit more creativity in the middle. So it's really difficult to know what I think he's really struggling to find the balance in that midfield in terms of having really good ability on the ball, but also having running power off it to make sure we're not getting overrun and conceding too many chances. And I don't know whether it's because he's balancing out, the schedule at the moment, or because we don't have the players in that middle of the park to do what he wants, or it's still something he's trying to figure out. But at the moment, that midfield definitely seems the biggest area where he's chopping and changing. Everywhere else seems pretty settled. I think we know the best front three at the moment is Sarr, Solanke, Son. The best back four, Porro, Romero, Van der Ven, Udogie. We know that. But that midfield at the moment, we have a very good players in there, but you just can't seem to find what the right balance is there.
And it was kind of similar to last season, right? We were chopping and changing a lot in the middle of the park as well, with Ange not knowing really what his best midfield is. In terms of the way I look at it, is that you probably want to tailor it to who you're playing against. Maybe if you're coming up against a team like Ipswich, where you're massive favourites to win the game, and you're really looking to take the game to the opposite, which we do most in every game. But in Ipswich in specific, you probably want to have a Maddison and a Kulusevski there to have a bit more guile in the midfield. But then if you're coming up against a team that are going to give you more problems, that you're expecting more problems in Ipswich, then maybe have a Sarr and Kulusevski in the middle there. So I guess maybe you want to play a different kind of variation of the midfield in terms of who you're playing against, and counter it that way. But you talk about Spurs, willing to we can put off these results against the teams in the top 10, and we'll go beat Man City in the cup, right, and then we'll go lose to Ipswich. But that's not really being reflected so far in the league campaign, and it wasn't really reflected in the league campaign last season either. Like, we struggle massively against these teams in the top 10. The only team that we've taken a win off this season in the top 10 is Aston Villa. In terms of last season, we luckily beat Liverpool, didn't we, in the early stage of the season? We beat Villa away from home. I mean, who else in the top 10 did we actually beat last season? Manchester United. Who else?
We obviously got a draw at the Emirates. Other than that, Man City, we got a draw away from home as well, so we didn't lose that game. Obviously, I don't know where did Fulham finish last? We beat Newcastle 4-1 at home as well. Yeah. So we had some wins, but obviously a lot of that run at the end of the season, where we played a big stretch of tough away games and tough games, essentially, at the end of the season, we lost them all. We didn't get a point. And what I would say is this season, when you compare if you're just comparing barefaced facts, then you might have a point. But I would argue the performances this season against those teams, the performances away at Brighton this season compared to last season was very different. The performances away at Newcastle this season, last season were very different. Maybe Arsenal was quite similar, but those performances would suggest we're more ready to compete this season against them, even though maybe we didn't get the result. We definitely would. We were 2-0 up against Brighton. We should have got the result there. Newcastle, we definitely should have got at least a draw in that game as well, compared to last season when we lost 4-0 and got battered. Brighton last season, we were never in that game. We were 4-0 down as well in that game. So, on the bare face of it, are we gonna? Is that telling me we're definitely going to get results in these games against big sides, because we're still losing them? So that's a fair comment. But I would also argue, if you say you like to use your eyes, if you use your eyes, does your eyes not suggest to you that we're much more able to compete in those games?
In those particular games, but I think when you look at Brighton away last season and look at Brighton away this season, obviously if you take the first halves, much better this year than it was last year. But I remember last year we were 4-0 down, but by the end of the game, with the chances that we created, we probably could have gone on even level terms. We could have finished that game with a draw if we take some of our chances. So it was a game of two halves last year, and it was a game of two halves this year. The only difference is that we were 4-0 down. Was it at half-time or just after half-time?
We were 3-0 down at half-time, I think. Fourth goal just after the break as well. So we only got back in the game in the last 10 minutes.
But we actually created enough in those last 10 minutes to actually get back in the game.
Yeah, but it was, they're 4-0. The game's pretty much over at that point.
I'm not denying the fact it was a lot better this year, but there were a few similarities in both the games in terms of we created a lot of chances. We put the ball in the back of the net a couple of times, and we were dreadfully open in certain stages of the game. Newcastle, it's been our best performance at Newcastle for a while now, because we've been battered up there the last couple of years. So yeah, like I said, I use my eyes, and these kind of games against these teams have been better, but we're still losing the game. But on the flip side of that, I'm using my eyes as well against the lower teams in the league, and it's a lot worse. than actually last season. Crystal Palace away, we won there and quite deservedly so last year. Maybe it was a bit tighter than that, but the teams against the teams that got promoted last year, like I said, we've taken 1 point so far out of 2. When I think didn't we beat every promoted side home and away last season?
I think so.
So, yeah, fine. Performances might be slightly better, not slightly, but better against the teams that we've lost to this season, and we're still getting the same result. But against the lower end teams, the performances are much worse, and we're not getting the results as well.
So it's all about whether it'll balance itself out. Will we start to pick up those wins, and will the points balance itself out, and will we start to get the points that maybe the data suggests we will, or are we just bound by this inconsistency, and will that carry on? And regardless of what the data says, are we just destined to be mid-table for the rest of the season? I guess time will tell, but I'm just hoping that the data can tell its own story. On the flip side, obviously, we've added Europe this season, and obviously a much longer run in the cups as well. A lot of fans went into the season suggesting they don't care about the league, and then and the cups is all that matter. And if fans who had that opinion, isn't that what this looks like? Not caring about the league and doing well in the cups.
I thought it was a ridiculous statement from the off to say that you don't care about the league and only care about the cups. You got to care about, every competition that you're in, and you need to show your best side. And when Ange Postecoglou takes over this football club, his remit wasn't just to go and win a cup, but it was also to improve our league position. So you got to take everything into account. So look, what these fans say, those fans say, but I was never of that opinion, and I don't think you were ever of that opinion.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying, we spoke to a lot of fans pre-season who said that it wasn't. I'm not saying it's the majority, because it's not, but it wasn't exactly like a small number. There was a lot of fans who said, where have we finished in the league? As long as it's not like ridiculously low, like mid-tech, like bottom half, then the main focus is trying to break that cup hoodoo. And that at the moment we're only 3 points off third, but we are doing well in the cups, and we are doing well in Europa League.
Early days though, isn't it?
Yeah, we just beat Man City. We knocked them out of the Carabao Cup, who are a team who have dominated that competition. I know they didn't win last year, but for many years, they've dominated that competition. So it's no mean feat to dump them out of the cup.
Great. It was a great night.
And we are. I think, obviously, if you offered me 10th after 11 games at the beginning of the season, I wouldn't have said yes. I would have said that's a terrible start, but hopefully, you got to remember. I remember like Pochettino's sides when he was our manager. We did usually start the season with a bit of inconsistency, and then once it hit like November time, and then to December, we really found our groove, and we started to climb the table and find a bit of consistent form. It's still very early days. I know 11 games is not. It's not right at the beginning. You can definitely make judgments after 11 games. It's not nothing, but it's also early enough where things can very easily turn, especially with the how close the Premier League table is. Things can definitely turn in our favour for sure in a few weeks' time. And hopefully now we'll have no more breaks after this international break. Hopefully we can really start to knuckle down in this season and get focused and really back up our performances with the points that a lot of them have deserved, which we haven't had this season. I guess a lot of more worrying thing is there's rumours flying around about this one doesn't like Ange and that one does like Ange, and Matt is something going on with Maddison with Ange at the moment. There's the rumours flying around they've had a bust up. If that's true, then that's never a good thing, and that's obviously something that hopefully I don't know how reliable these rumours are, but there are rumours at the moment that they're not all as well. But when you're when you've just had these results, I'm sure Ange is unhappy, and I'm sure a lot of the players are thinking how are we losing these games, and I don't think that's unfair of that situation to happen. Of course, when you're losing games to Palace and Ipswich, there's going to be a big inquest, I think, regardless of how close we are to third. When you are getting those results, there has to be a big inquest. But as Ange said consistently in his press conferences, criticism and all that kind of stuff is healthy. It's healthy to get that out in the open. And I don't think if someone voices their frustration to him, he would take it personally. I think he would want to discuss that. And if they've had a bust up or whatever, I'm sure they can work through it.
I really hope so, man. I really hope so, because I've said it a number of times that I want Ange to work. I want I want to back Ange and I want to see him really flourish at Spurs. But the reality is, since the first 10 games of the season, we have been on horrific form. It's been horrific. And a lot of managers have been sacked for a lot less at Tottenham Hotspur. Yes, the underlying metrics are there for all to see in terms of Spurs showing progression, but the results, it hasn't transferred into results. That's the issue. Maybe it will. But with these games coming up, City, Fulham, Bournemouth, Chelsea, if we do go on like a winless run now in the next 4 games, or get one win over the next 4 games, like where does that leave us, and where does that leave Ange? Because is Daniel Levy going to wield that famous axe of his?
If we go winless, it depends how we've played. But obviously, I mean, I guess it doesn't if we're saying that we've played well and still not getting results, and that's all what matters. But I would say, you know, if I'm watching this team and I feel like they've given up on the project, then you know, whoever the manager is, when that happens, it's hard to turn that tide, essentially, and you have to think again. But at the moment, I don't think we're there yet, and I'm hoping that in these next 4 games we'll pick up some results that maybe, you know, it just wouldn't shock me if we go to the Etihad and win. It's just we're just that kind of team. Even I remember Decky saying after the City game when we beat them, he was like, these kind of games don't worry me. He's like, we know that City are going to try and beat us, and that's what we want. That's what we want to see. That's what we want to play against, and that game doesn't worry me. I'm not saying we're going to definitely go and win at the Etihad. I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if we do, because that's just kind of how Tottenham are as a team at the moment. But if we do go winless in these next 4 games and we're not playing well, and with the performance abject similar to the Ipswich and Palace games, then yeah, there's got to be very serious questions asked. If we're, you know, in 14th place and we're still performances are not improving, and we're putting in abject displays, then I think definitely the hierarchy will probably be looking seriously at that.
Because like there was a time, I think, when we were on our way to Brighton together, we were chatting in the car, and you were saying, and I think we were both saying, you know, it's so nice to go watch Tottenham, to know exactly what you're going to see on that pitch, you know. And
up until that moment, it was probably right.
Up until that moment, it was right. But since that moment has happened,
I think you know what, I even said that at half time. I think it was at half time of Brighton.
Yeah,
half time of the Brighton game. That was when it was. You know what
kind of Tottenham are going to turn up. But now we're sitting right here, you know, 15th of November. We don't know what Tottenham are going to turn up now. Mm-hmm. 2 out of the last 3 Premier League games have been unacceptable, completely unacceptable, away at Palace and at home to Ipswich. But sandwiched in between that, you've got the home game against Aston Villa where we wiped the floor with them. So you just don't know what Tottenham are going to turn up at the moment. And that is a big cause of frustration and concern for me, massively, because the performances against Ipswich and the performances against Crystal Palace, they're just massive red flags for me. Really are.
But if you take the whole season as a whole, in terms of, if we're looking just purely based on performance level and not the results, right? Apart from, you're probably out of 11 games looking at 2.5 bad games, bad games.
Yeah.
Half Brighton, Palace, and Ipswich.
Yeah.
The rest of those performances have been pretty good.
Yeah.
So,
but the problem is that these poor performances, unexplainable performances, and unacceptable performances have been creeping in the most recent games. And, you know, you kind of want to go on an upward trajectory. It seems like we're going on a downward trajectory in terms of performances.
But progress isn't always just linear.
It's not linear, that's true. And Ange does say that, but
you can have bumps in the road. Maybe, look, it could be a bump.
There's bumps in the road, and there's putting in that kind of performances at home to Ipswich, where we thought we were all saying before the game, this stadium's a fortress. Crystal Palace away, you know, I know you were massively concerned going into the game, but, you know, Spurs fans were so confident of going there and getting the result, even with our away form. So, yeah, I get it. And, you know, there's a good argument to say, you know, progress isn't linear, but with these performances creeping in against these kind of sides, I just think it's a major red flag. I'm not willing to chuck out the project. I'm not willing to say goodbye to it. I want to see it work, and I'm backing it. I'm backing it 100% right now. But there are some red flags in there, and there are some major concerns about what happens over the course of the next 7 or 8 games. And I think by the time that comes, you know, we'll know what kind of season we're going to have, because we've got such difficult games. We've kind of blown away this favourable start to the season where we should be a lot higher than we are right now. We really should. You know, if we go and win against Palace and we go and win against Ipswich and we hold on against Brighton, we're sitting close to, if not top of the league right now, which is mad to think about. But these performances, man, they've made me question things a lot, and I'm probably questioning Ange more right now than I ever have done before.
I mean, it makes sense when you've just lost 2 games against winless teams. I think anyone, if Man City had done that, everyone would be questioning them as well right now. I'm not. It doesn't surprise me.
Well, they are 4 losses on the bounce.
Yeah, they are 4 losses on the bounce, but and as well, you know, Athletic did a report that there's a lot of tension in the Man City dressing room at the moment, and that's a team who have won 4 titles in a row, let alone Spurs. So, you know, even at that level, when you're on that kind of run, there's always going to be questions asked and all these different things. But and I understand that, and when it's hard to see positives when you've had those kind of performances and those kind of results. But I'm hoping if we look at the season as a whole, performance level's actually been pretty good. We haven't maybe gotten the results that our performances have earned for a lot of those games. But the concerning thing is, as you say, the poorest results and the poorest performances have come over the last 3 games, and that's like the recent performances. And you know, things don't seem to be getting better when it comes to results wise, and that is a concern. There's no getting away from it. I can't sit here and say losing to Palace and Ipswich is all fine, and you know, a team who's functioning well would do that, because that's not true, and that would be dishonest for me to say. So as much as the underlying data suggests we are functioning well, you don't get those kind of results if you're functioning well, and that's a concern. So definitely something for Ange to figure out, but I'm confident he can turn it around.
I really hope you're right, man. I really hope you're right. And you're looking at some of the clubs that we're trying to face this year in terms of a top 4 battle. You know, you've got Chelsea, you've got Arsenal right now. I'm going to leave Man City and Liverpool out of it. I think Villa, Newcastle. I think Fulham. I think Fulham and Forest will probably drop over the course of the season. But you're probably looking at, you know, there's a big battle for 4th this season. You've got us, Villa, Newcastle. I'd even put Brighton in there, Arsenal and Chelsea. You could say all those teams are in a top 4 battle this year. You're looking at the 2 teams who are the biggest dangers for us, was probably Arsenal and Chelsea. You know, they've played a good chunk. You know, I think they've had a fairly hard start to the season, both of them. Where you're looking at our start to the season, we've had a fairly easy start to the season. So that's also another concern.
Potentially, but you know, Chelsea drew with Palace. You know what I mean? They also dropped points to teams in the bottom. Brighton drew 0-0 at home to Ipswich. It's not, you know, it's not as simple as that all the time.
Yeah, but you know, in terms of losses, Chelsea have lost 2 games this season against Man City and Liverpool. They've not lost in any other game that they've played this season. Arsenal have gone away to all the big clubs bar Liverpool this season. They've got all their hard away games out the window already. Like we are losing to teams like Ipswich, Crystal Palace, and you know, teams in and around us as well. So I mean, we need to step up massively if we're going to
We need to get some big wins.
We need massively, and we need to go on a run.
We're capable of it.
I don't know. I think we're capable of getting big wins, but I don't know if we're capable of going on this run that we need to go on. Because I do think we need to go on a run.
Well, not necessarily. We're only 3 points behind. Everyone's inconsistent.
We're only 3 points behind now, but you've got other teams that have got favourable fixtures coming up, and we've got our hardest period of the season coming up.
Yeah.
That's the concerning thing. And I can't see us going on a run when we've got hard game after hard game with the Europa League in the middle there. You know, we've lost 3 games out of our last... we've dropped 3 games out of our last 3 Europa League games, the games after. So... I just can't see it. I can't see us going on a big run and getting more points than those teams I've mentioned, the Chelseas, the Arsenals, in and around us to really put a foothold for us in the top 4 race. It's still early days and there's a long season ahead. I don't doubt that. And you never know what kind of twists and turns are going to come throughout the season. But right now, if you're going to ask me to make a prediction if Spurs are going to finish in the top 4, I'm saying no. I'm saying no chance. I don't think we're strong enough. And in personnel-wise, I don't think we're strong enough either.
I think we've definitely lost a lot more ground than I expected at this point. So top 4 is going to be a lot more difficult than it should have been, considering the results we get. I don't think we're out of it at all. I think we're definitely right in the mix, in my opinion, considering how we're considering our numbers and how we're playing and what I've seen from Tottenham this season, we can definitely be there and amongst it. And I do think a lot of the teams like Forest, Fulham, maybe even Brighton, they'll fall away come when it comes like December, January time. I don't think that they'll be right in the thick of it, and I'm more than hopeful that we can be. But whether Chelsea and Arsenal will pull away, we'll have to wait and see. I'm looking at the form at the moment. Chelsea have won one of their last 5. Arsenal have won one of their last 5. So they're not in great form either. As much as we're getting embarrassing losses, they're not also showing consistency at the moment. So we can say tough games, all this, all that, but in the Premier League, anyone could beat anyone. That's the reality, and that I wouldn't be surprised if Arsenal get some shock results against teams they expect them to beat, and I wouldn't be surprised if we get some shock results and get games you expect us to lose and we get points. That's just how the Premier League is. So I think we're still right in amongst it. If would my money on us be getting top 4 right now? Probably not, because we've lost a lot of ground against good teams. But I definitely think top 5 I'd still put money on. And I still think we're right in amongst it for top 4. And I still think we're right in there with the cups.
The difference is that those teams that you mentioned about Arsenal and Chelsea being off form, is they're dropping points to, Arsenal went to Newcastle away and lost. They drew with Chelsea, they drew with Liverpool, really hard games. Chelsea the same. They're dropping points to these kind of calibre of teams. We're dropping points to the likes of Ipswich and Crystal Palace. And I know, Chelsea drew with Crystal Palace in the early stage of the season as well, but I'm talking about their form in the last 5 games. When we're losing to the likes of Ipswich at home, drawing to Leicester, losing to Crystal Palace, and we've still got those hard games to come. Bring them on. I'm just massively concerned, man, and I think
we can beat these teams.
We can, but not on a regularity, and we haven't shown that under Ange Postecoglou as of yet.
Well, it's time to show it.
It's time to show it. I think par for us this season is probably around 6th. I would say
5th. I would say
6th. I think who are the teams that I think are better than us? Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal, Chelsea.
I still think we can finish above Chelsea as well. As much as they're doing well at the moment, I think we can finish above them.
And, we're not even taking into account Manchester United as well with Ruben Amorim. A new manager bounce is probably on its way. They are only, they're not far off us at all. They're 1 point behind us. And, they've had their worst start ever to a Premier League campaign, and they're only 1 point behind us.
The whole league everyone's had their worst starts. You know what I mean? It's so tight.
But look, I think there are a few things to cling on to when you're looking at the underlying metrics, but on the face of things, with the results that we've been getting, with the performances that have started to creep in, I am extremely concerned where this Premier League campaign is taking us. And if you ask me right now, would I take 6th and a cup? Yeah, I would take it. But am I going to keep complaining about bad results that happen throughout the course of the season? You're goddamn right I am, because Spurs should never be losing and dropping points to these kind of teams in a Premier League season. Like I said before, I don't remember the last time Spurs have struggled to take points on a regular basis against the teams that have been promoted. I don't think it's happened. When's the last time that's happened? I can't remember. You're the guy that remembers every result since 2002, so maybe you can tell me. But that should never be happening. And when we're supposed to be in a project, are these kind of results supposed to be expected in the second season where Ange claims he always wins? I can't be expecting these kind of results, and they're nowhere near good enough. And we need to sort this out urgently.
I agree, and I'm banking on the fact that these results won't define our season, but maybe they will.
Yeah. Well, that is it. I guess that is how we think the season's going so far. Maybe one more negative than the other, but that is just how we're feeling as Spurs fans at the moment. But let me know your thoughts on the season so far. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on, you Spurs.